The Daily Ironman Show with Ironman Daily is Ironman Daily. Welcome back to Ironman Daily. Ironman Daily. So today's episode, normally I would post some memes, and instead what we're doing is we are just going to talk about a recent exchange I had in the comment section of a previous video. The video was Ironman Daily number 481, titled Moral Obligations and Virtues. Here is the first comment. I'll put it up. Oh, connection lost. Please wait. Attempting to reestablish. I'll put the comment up on screen now. Hopefully this game reconnects in just a moment. Here's what he said. He said, "When people talk about objective morals, they mean things that are good or evil in reality, not about the perception of their specific society. For example, even though slavery was permitted by many societies, it is objectively morally wrong." An interesting question would be, can objective morals exist without God? If not, what makes those morals actually objective and binding? I'm convinced this is a good argument for God's existence, since we perceive objective moral truths in the world around us. Curious what you think. So I responded, I said, "Hi Raphael, thanks for dropping in. You present a good line of argumentation. This is the moral argument for God's existence. Essentially, if objective morality exists, then God must exist too, because there's nothing else to qualify objective morals." That's the argument. I agree with your definition of objective morality. It's the idea that good and evil are real properties of the outside world, that behavior can be good or evil, right or wrong, regardless of any social perspective on it. But in my view, without the social perspective, there's nothing to qualify the goodness or evilness of behavior. My position is, even if objective morality exists, it does not imply the existence of God. If objective morals are a property of the outside world we call reality, that's perfectly natural. I believe in reality. Reality can have its own properties without God. I don't see the logic of how God is necessary for morals to exist in reality. If we believe individually or as a group that there exists a deeper set of morals than what is defined by society, that an underlying objective morality truly exists and we are set to discover it, how can we know when we've found it? This is my main contention with your comment. You say that we perceive objective moral truths in the world around us. This perception is relative to you as an individual. How can you possibly distinguish objective morals from relative morals when you see them? So he replied, he said, "Ironman Daily, I'm unable to distinguish between a reality of physical objects and a cleverly constructed illusion like the Matrix. However, I'm rationally justified in believing that a physical world of objects objectively exists. Why couldn't this approach work for moral reality as well?" Without God, I didn't mean to say that I couldn't, right? I'm not denying objective morality. I'm just denying that objective morality implies God's existence. Without God, I don't see what would ground morals and make them binding. Let's say we discover a particle which has an inscription etched into it which says murder is objectively wrong. This would be puzzling, but would there be anything actually binding about it? Would it necessarily make that statement objectively true? Yeah, so this is what I'm going to answer. I'm going to explain how objective morals are binding, and he's not going to understand, and then we're going to keep going on back and forth for a few more times here. Let me just plant these seeds, clean these herbs, and then I'm off to the races. We're going to the next spot. Raphael, thanks for sharing your perspective. I had written a very polite and comprehensive reply, but the mobile app erased my message when I accidentally switched tabs, so now I'm pissed. Please forgive me. I really wish I could go through this with you more carefully and extensively. God doesn't ground objective morality any more than reality does. Anything that objectively exists is already fully grounded in reality. Can we be sneaky and disobey the moral law? Sure, but then we would be enacting objectively immoral behavior. If objective morality exists, it's precisely because it exists that we don't have to ground it in anything else. Anything that's part of reality is bound by real properties, by its own nature. So how do we know that reality exists at all? Consensus. If I experience a wooden chair, I know that it is real not just because of my experience, but because I form consensus with other people who also experience it. This is how we discover reality through empiricism. The field of science we might try to use to discover objective morality would be something like sociology, not particle physics. So your example of seeing a particle with an inscription is irrelevant. Moses had an inscription on a rock too, like "Thou shalt not kill." He said it came from God, but that's dubious. Let me finish by talking about what's really important here. The experience of objective morality. People have this ability to experience it, apparently. If you commit a grave sin, you feel guilty. If you commit the lesser of two evils, you still know you've done something wrong and you struggle to live it down. This type of thing is what's so important. People seem to have encounters with objective morality. That's essential to this conversation. That's what I want to get more at. What is it like to encounter objective morality, to experience it? Raphael, if you have the ability to experience objective morality, to feel it in your soul, then you are gifted, because not everyone can do it. What I was thinking of here is like a psychopath or a sociopath who doesn't really know, they don't have an intuition about ethics. Not everybody has moral intuition. Ironman Daily, I sympathize with your experience of the YouTube mobile app. It is extremely buggy for me. I think you're wrong about empiricism grounding the belief that the physical world is truly real. Notice how he brings in this idea of the physical world, something I never brought up. I never said that reality was physical. If we lived in a well-constructed simulation, we would absolutely expect the simulation to hold up to empirical scrutiny. That wouldn't make the physical objects in the simulation any more real. The existence of objective morals requires an explanation. Other than God, I don't see what would be an adequate explanation. That's what I mean when I say that God grounds the belief in objective morals. So, the explanation for the existence of objective morals, why can't they just exist? Like, why can't you just accept that? Can't they just, isn't that an explanation enough? Like, that they're part of reality? Like, how does God made it explain it with any precision at all? It doesn't. It doesn't have any explanatory power. Unless you're basically just saying it's magic. Like, it makes sense because it's magic, and when it's magic, nothing has to make sense. So that's how it makes sense. Raphael, I didn't mean to claim that empiricism grounds a belief in the physical world. Notably, the physical world is different from reality. I'm skeptical of your claims about simulation. Human perception is itself a kind of simulation, but we are still able to determine features of the outer world with empiricism. The outer world we share is part of reality, whether or not it's simulating something else. You say that the existence of objective morals requires an explanation, but I don't understand how God explains their existence in any way that reality does not. In other words, what is it about God that explains the existence of objective morality? Now I clean these herbs. We're going to the last herb patch. Still have a lot of comments to get through here. Ironman Daily. They're able to determine features, or we are able to determine features of what we assume to be the outside world based on empirical sense data, but we can never come to a definitive conclusion that the physical world therefore really exists and isn't the matrix. So this is like superfluous, like whether or not it's like quote unquote real or if it's the matrix, like that's beside the point. Like even if we're in the matrix is still part of reality. Therefore, we simply assume the physical world really exists. And when doing so, we aren't being irrational. If you want to know more, look up properly basic beliefs. I'm probably not doing it justice. Yeah, you're not even calling it by the right name. Properly basic beliefs, there's no such thing. That's just made up. I can't look that up because that's not a real thing. God grounds objective morals because it gives a sufficient explanation for their origin. If there exists a God, so this is like I was saying about magic. Like, yeah, magic sufficiently explains everything. If you just say everything is magic, then yeah, everything is explained by that, because magic can break all the rules. If there exists a God whose nature is good, his nature provides an eternal, unchanging... If there exists a God whose nature is good, his nature provides an eternal, unchanging, absolute standard for goodness that is independent of human opinion. So that's basically what objective morality is. That's what we're talking about. Raphael. And so, in order to spite him here, he's saying, I basically say the exact same thing that he says. He says, if there exists a God whose nature is good, his nature provides an eternal, unchanging, absolute standard for goodness that is independent of human opinion. So I say the exact same thing. I just swap out the words with objective morality. I say, if there exists an objective morality whose nature is good, its nature provides an eternal, unchanging, absolute standard for goodness that is independent of human opinion. So I'm basically just throwing it back in his face. See what he thinks of that. He says, I don't see how such an objective morality could be self-existing. It seems like it would be contingent, i.e. require a cause. In the same way that if I told you that physicists have discovered a new force, you would ask what process or particle is responsible for this force. An effect necessitates a cause. Okay, well, how do you figure that objective morality would be contingent? He's just making this up. It makes more sense to me that it would exist necessarily as an unchanging eternal standard. If objective morality were to change, then it would be relative to the times and no longer objective. You're moving on now to a different argument for God's existence, the contingent, or I don't know exactly the name for it, but the idea is that everything's contingent or necessary, and God is necessary for all the contingent things to exist, like the first cause, the uncaused cause. He replies, he says, Ironman Daily, if objective morality is a property of our physical reality, then it's contingent on the existence of the physical universe, in the same way that physical laws like gravity are. The uncaused cause, which he says is God because he's already so buried in this belief system, the uncaused cause is necessary to explain the universe's existence. The uncaused cause necessary to explain the universe's existence could be a sufficient explanation for why the physical universe contains moral laws. So I reply by hammering on this point about the physical world. I say, Raphael, there is more to reality than just the physical world. You think if morality were objectively real, it would have to be physical. What is physical about morality? And he replies, he says, I don't see any evidence that morality exists eternally in a way that is distinct to God's nature. So here's where we kind of get off the rails. There are convincing arguments for God's existence which can ground objective morals, but I haven't seen any convincing arguments for the existence of objective morals without God. So I'm going to try to explain to him how this contradicts with his original position, but he's not going to understand. When you say there's more to reality than the physical world, does that mean you're not a philosophical naturalist? How did you come to the conclusion that naturalism's false? So now he's trying to pin me as a naturalist, which is also irrelevant. Back to the other side. I reply, in your original comment you said we perceive objective moral truths in the world around us, with the argument being that because we see objective morality first, we can conclude that God exists. But now in your latest comment you say, I don't see any evidence that morality exists eternally in a way that is distinct to God's nature, and I haven't seen any convincing arguments for the existence of objective morals without God. So, which is it? Did you see the objective morals or not? Like, do you see them as something distinct to God's nature? Or are you just trying to say that objective morality is God? Because if you see them as distinct things, then you can see that they exist eternally in a way that is distinct to God's nature. Because they're different. Like, objective morality is different from God. So which is it, I ask him? Do you really see objective morality in the world, or do you just see God's nature? Your latest comment goes against your original argument, because the idea in the original argument is that objective morality is already evident. Like you said, we perceive objective moral truths in the world around us. But now, in the latest comment, you would need a convincing argument for the existence of objective morals. I thought you could already perceive that they exist. So now I take a shot. I say, people who sincerely love God tend to have this problem, where they use an argument that comes to mind, they use any argument that comes to mind to feed the conclusion that God exists. You would be a better philosopher if you followed the reason where it goes on its own, starting from what we know from experience, then to start from the conclusion you want to believe and build an argument that leads there. As for your question about naturalism, I think nature can be non-physical, so my belief in the non-physical world does not imply that I am not a naturalist. It does, however, imply that I am not a physicalist. Now, excuse me, I gotta take a sip, and Raphael is going to reply here. He says he's going to deny what I accused him of. He says, at Ironman Daily statement, I perceive objective moral truths in the world around me, and I don't see any evidence to support objective moral truths without God, are not at odds. A lot of other stuff you said is just ad hominem. I'm not going to respond in kind. Which part of the natural world is non-physical? So now he's hammering on this other point, which is kind of irrelevant to the discussion. I'm trying to see, like, he's saying that objective morals imply the existence of God, but there's no connection there. What is the logical connection that brings the existence of objective morality into the existence of God? There's nothing there. So I'm pissed. I say, I'm not going to respond in kind my ass, because that is a response in kind. He's saying, oh yeah, I'm not going to be an asshole like you. Well, fuck you. You're the one who's being an asshole by saying that. If you really wanted to just leave it behind you, you wouldn't have said anything. If you really want to know what part of the natural world is non-physical, you have to discover that for yourself. You shouldn't trust necessarily what I say about it just because I am Ironman Daily. He replies, he says, well, I didn't insult you, but you keep insulting me. Why are you trying to hurt my feelings? We were having an interesting conversation. So now this guy's just being a bitch. I think the argument for God's existence and for Jesus' resurrection are good reasons to reject philosophical naturalism. Sounds like a guy who listens to David Wood. Physical naturalists believe there's nothing outside of the physical universe, including all matter, energy, and space. I think that's a made-up definition. If you believe something exists outside of that, I'd be curious to know what it is that you believe in and why. You don't have to answer, obviously, but then what has been the point of our conversation? The point of our conversation has been to try to educate you, but you're too damn stubborn and thick-skulled to get any lessons into your head. So I said, I'm sorry to have insulted you. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I was offended when you said I'm not going to respond in kind, because saying that is itself a response in kind. I gave you a tip on how you might be able to improve your philosophy, and you took it as an ad hominem attack. You could have just let it go, but instead you had to comment on how you made it feel and characterize me as an attacker. How dare you? You can't talk on my level about philosophy, about the philosophy we are doing together, but you can talk about how my advice hurts your feelings. Get over yourself. So he left one last comment here, unfortunately. He said, shouldn't I expect to be treated with dignity regardless of whether I'm a good philosopher? No. I've never claimed to be better than anyone else. It seems to me that if you tell somebody they're a bad philosopher in a discussion, I didn't, in a discussion about philosophy, then that is an ad hominem since it seeks to discredit your partner rather than address what they're saying. Bro, I'm just giving you a tip. I'm just saying, like, here's something you could do to improve your philosophy. This is a perfectly normal thing. Like, if we were wrestling and I gave you a tip on how to improve your wrestling, like, you could take the advice or not. Like, I'm not trying to discredit your skills. I'm just saying that you would be better if you were fucking reasonable. The reason I mentioned that I wasn't responding in kind wasn't to attack you, but to point out that we don't have to insult each other. Anyway, accept your apology. I do appreciate it. Yeah. What a bum. This guy. Can't believe it. So, this is the type of thing you have to deal with in the post-Christian world, where all these guys want to believe in God, and they do stupid things like this and comment on my videos. So if you want to come at me like that, bring it on, and let's fight in the comments. I'll fight anybody to defend my philosophy, the philosophy of Ironman Daily. So I think that's that. Thank you for watching this episode of Ironman Daily. Let me know if you have any questions or if you want any further explanations on anything that was said in the discussion I covered today. And I will be back on Monday with another episode because I post only on weekdays, not on weekends, in case you didn't know. Have a good weekend. Take care.